This is one of my favorite things to cook, period. Mapo Tofu. And I grew up eating the authentic Sichuan version as I grew up in China. That is until I went to the Korean army and I tasted something else entirely. I'll show you both. First, the Sichuan version. The dish is called Mapo Tofu, so we'll start with the tofu. 1.5 cubes of firm to medium firm tofu, diced and put into a pot of water, and bring it up to a boil. Now prep the veggies. 2 to 3 spring onions, chopped, same with the ginger, but finer, and mince about 3 garlic cloves, but I have them pre-minced. Now we have to talk about this, 郫县豆瓣酱, or Sichuan spicy bean paste. Fermented broad beans and chili oil. This stuff is spicy, salty, funky, packed with umami, and no, it's not replaceable. Mixing miso and sriracha just won't cut it. And for me, this is the main source of sodium for this dish, and that's why for 1 tofu, a generous tablespoon. Just make sure you give it a rough chop. Finally, another Sichuan ingredient, Sichuan peppercorns, prickly ash, or huajiao in Chinese. Yes, this stuff gives you that tongue-tingling, electrifying sensation, but more importantly, it gives off an almost citrusy yet deeply savory aroma. Again, no substitutions. Take a tablespoon and gently toast them in a dry pan until they turn amber brown. And while they're still hot, grind them up to a fine powder. To the stove, brown 1/2 pound of ground beef until you get that brown crispy stuff, and throw in the spicy bean paste. Stir constantly for a minute or so and heat on medium to low. We want to cook the bean paste out, but not burn it. You'll know it's there when that raw funk changes to this deeply savory, almost toasty aroma, and there is red chili oil pooling at the bottom. And before it gets any more toasty, throw in the spring onion, the ginger, the garlic, maybe a tablespoon of cooking wine, and soy sauce. Gently stir in the warm tofu cubes, careful not to break them, and maybe a cup of the tofu water too. We want a loose gravy, and that's why we also need a tablespoon of potato starch and water stirred in. Some also call this a slurry. Give it a minute to thicken up, turn off the heat, and sprinkle on the rest of the ground peppercorns. You should also garnish with some chopped up garlic shoots, but I didn't have any. And this stuff is pure crack. But this is not the only mapo tofu I've had in my life. When I was in the army, mapa dubu or mapo tofu was often on the menu too. I mean, it's nothing like what we just made, but it wasn't half bad, considering the other stuff they were feeding me. We'll begin with some frozen pork slices straight from the freezer. Don't worry about thawing them into the pan, flame on high. And this is how they always cooked meat in the Korean army for some reason. And when they're brown and cooked through, we'll add in a tablespoon of minced garlic, followed by a tablespoon of chili powder, and then some roughly chopped spring onions. Now for the important bit. Instead of the Chinese douban jiang, we're putting in a tablespoon of Korean doenjang because, yeah, they sure didn't have the original stuff in the army mess hall. Anyhow, fry that for a minute, deglaze with a tablespoon of soy sauce and mirin, add the tofu cubes, and a little bit of the tofu water. Thicken the gravy with a little cornstarch slurry, and voila! I mean, I know, this looks like any other Korean stir fry with some tofu thrown in it. That on some white rice, maybe a fried egg on top. Are you not gonna eat this? Come on.